Hey guys, how you doing? So today I'm back with another top 5 video, and this time we will take a look at my top 5 mid-range smartphones in 2024, so let's get right into it. Number 1 on my list today is the Moto Edge 50 Fusion, and you can get this one in a few different colors for a price of 350 euros. Now I got the hot pink version, but you can also get it in the colors of forest blue and marshmallow blue. Now the only difference between those three colors is the material on the backside. The pink and the marshmallow blue version have a vegan leather back, and the forest blue one will come with a plastic backside, but all of them will come in at the same price. Now something what I really like about the smartphone are the cameras. So you got a 50 megapixel main camera which can shoot videos in 4K and 30 FPS, and an ultra wide angle shooter, and both of these cameras don't stick out at all. They are basically flush with the rest of the backside. Now looking at the phone from the side, you can see that the back and the front display curves around towards the plastic frame, and something you have to know right here is that even though you have a curved display, you will get some rather large bezels all around this phone, which is a bit thicker on the bottom side. So this phone has a 6.7 inch P-OLED display with full HD resolution. It lights up with a peak of 1600 nits and has a 144 Hz display, which you can trim down to 120 or 90 Hz. Videos on this phone will look great, and just the black bezels all around this phone are a bit disturbing. The battery life is great as well, as it has a 5000 mAh battery which will be fully charged in just 50 minutes, and in just 10 minutes you will be back to its 20%, and overall you can expect the phone to last about 1.5 days on a single charge. Now I don't want to go too deep into the features since most Android phones have more or less the same. So you get 256 gigs of internal storage, of which about 12 gigs are already used up by the system. Now there's a fingerprint sensor underneath the display and a face detection, and both work just fine in my opinion. And you get a few gesture controls, like you can shake the phone to turn on the flashlight, double press the power button to open up the camera, and you can take a quick screenshot if you place your 3 fingers on the screen. So actually pretty basic for a Motorola smartphone. Then you have some Moto specific apps like Family Space, which creates a space for family members with only a selected set of apps. Like for your kids, you can only activate the camera and some of the gaming apps. Then there is the Ready For to connect your phone to other devices so you can stream your videos on there. And you got the Moto app. Right here you can change and personalize your phone a little bit more. You can change the text size and the font. There are different fingerprint animations that you can choose from, like this radial wave, boomerang, or chroma dial. You also have different edge lightings with a few different colors. Now as for the performance, this one is one of the better phones on this list today, as you get the Qualcomm Snapdragon 7S Gen 2, on which you can play all of your games on the highest graphics settings and you don't have any lags. Now I tried Genshin Impact and it worked without any problems. Now as for the camera, you get a 50 megapixel main camera with OIS, and it shoots videos in 4K resolution and 30 FPS. Now the second one is a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, and on the front you will get a 32 megapixel cam which can shoot videos in 1080p and 30 FPS. Now as for your pictures, the only bad thing is that it cannot capture moving objects that good, and they turn out to be a little bit blurry. But besides that, your pictures will look good. They are vivid but not oversaturated, you have a good contrast and detail level, and that goes for your main and for your ultra wide angle camera. Both are actually really good in my opinion. Now when it comes to your portrait shots, I'm once again a big fan of this camera. The ones with the main camera have a good background blurriness with nice poppy colors, and the selfie camera is alright-ish as well. Now smartphone number 2 for the day is the Samsung Galaxy A55. So you can get this phone in 4 different awesome colors, and you get a 50 megapixel main camera, there's a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 5 megapixel macro camera. Now in the middle of the polished Gorilla Glass back, you get the Samsung logo, which has the same color as the rest of the phone. You have an aluminum frame and Gorilla Glass Victus Plus glass on the front, so this phone is overall very scratch resistant. But I will still cover it up with a case, just in case. As for the weight, the A55 weighs in at 213 grams, which is fairly heavy for a smartphone with that size, and is IP67 dust and water resistant. Now this phone has a 6.6 inch AMOLED display with 1080p by 2340 pixel resolution and a peak brightness of 1000 nits. It also has a smooth 120Hz display, which you can trim down to 60Hz, and just like on the Moto Edge 50 Fusion, we'll get a great video experience thanks to the smooth display, the OLED panel, and a crisp resolution. Now, the small selfie camera on top really doesn't get in the way, and your black bezels all around the phone are evenly thin, and only the one on the bottom is a little bit thicker, but you really don't see the difference that good. Now, as for your audio, you have a stereo speaker setup with Dolby Atmos, and the sound is clear and you get good loudness. So this phone runs on One UI 6.1 based on Android 14, and unlike with the Moto smartphone, you don't get as many pre-installed apps on here. It's pretty clean once you get the smartphone. You can get this phone with either 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage. Now, there is a fingerprint sensor underneath the display, and you get a face detection, which both work great. There are also a few extra features, like you can take screenshots with your 3 fingers once again. There is a lift to wake feature, you got multi-windows, a one-handed mode, or by double pressing the side button, you can open up one of your apps. So very standard right here. Performance-wise, this phone runs on the Exynos 1480 chipset, which is more than capable of giving you a nice clean experience in your day-to-day life. And even when it comes to gaming, you should be able to play most games on the highest graphics settings without any lags. It just gets pretty warm pretty fast if you play games on high settings. Battery wise, this one also has a 5000 mAh battery, which will give you about 7 to 8 hours of screen time, and depending on your usage, maybe a little bit more. But unfortunately, there's no wireless and no reverse wireless charging on the Samsung A55. As for your camera, you get a 50 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization. There is a 12 megapixel ultra wide and a 5 megapixel macro camera. The main camera can also shoot videos in 4K resolution, but only with 30 FPS. The selfie camera is a 32 megapixel camera, which can also shoot videos in 4K resolution with 30 FPS. When it comes to the pictures, I think they're not the best, but you can certainly live with the results. The picture quality is good enough for some vacation snapshots with a good amount of detail and contrast to it. As for the portrait shots, I would like to have a little bit more background blurriness, but I have to say that there is a slider to adjust that. You lose a lot of details and colors when you take pictures with the ultra wide camera, and the macro camera is no different. I would not get this phone if I need a decent macro camera, but at least we get a few camera modes. Now, smartphone number 3 for the day is the Xiaomi Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G. Which is a standard size smartphone, but it comes with a non-standard 200 megapixel camera and one of the coolest and prettiest designs you can get on a smartphone. You got that light purple blue matte color, which you also get on the extra element that your camera sits on. There are 3 in total. There's a 200 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization, a 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. If you flip the phone around, you get to see your 6.67-inch display, which is protected by Gorilla Glass Victus, which is, by the way, very durable. Now, this phone has a plastic frame, a glass back, and it's just IP54 dust and splash resistant, so you gotta be a little bit careful around water. Now, like I said, you have a 6.67-inch AMOLED display with Dolby Vision and a 120Hz display and a peak brightness of 1800 nits. So watching your anime and movies in bright sunlight shouldn't be a problem at all, and the 120Hz OLED display will do the rest of the job. As for the sound, you get a stereo speaker setup, even though the lower one is a little bit louder, but overall you get a quite loud smartphone and you get a clear sound as well. Now, certainly good enough for some YouTube videos and animes. Now, the Redmi Note 13 Pro is running on HyperOS, and it does run pretty smoothly. You get a bit of a face unlock and a built-in fingerprint sensor underneath the display, which works just fine in all of my tries. What I don't like is that you get a whole bunch of pre-installed apps on this phone, like Block Puzzle, Guardian, More Games, Bigo Live, whatever that's supposed to be, and more. This phone also has an always-on display mode with a few different customization options like signatures, analog clocks, digital ones, and more selected backgrounds. By the way, you have to know that you get a full 4 years of security updates and another 3 years of OS updates, which should last you through 2027. Now, as for your storage settings, you can either choose to get the smaller 256 gig version, or if you want to pay a little bit more, you can get the 512 gig version. But be careful, since you cannot put an extra SD card into the smartphone, and you get what you buy. Now, as for the performance and the gaming, the Redmi Note 13 Pro 5G is running on a slightly older Qualcomm Snapdragon 7 Gen 2, which is still good enough for some smooth swiping actions on your smartphone, and it does open up tabs and apps quite fast. Now, when it comes to gaming, I tried out Genshin Impact on the highest graphics settings, and it did very well. Well, the phone does get a little bit warm after a while, but you get a steady 30 FPS while you're playing. The good thing is that you get a game booster, and with this one you can bump up the frame rate to 60 FPS, which looks and feels a lot better. Next up, the battery life, and this will be a quick one. Now, you got a big 5100 mAh battery crammed inside of here, which should easily get you through the day, and you will still have about 20% left at the end of the day. So you can expect to get about 7 hours of on-screen time if you're not playing all day long or shooting videos non-stop. Also, you have a 67 watts fast charger. This will charge the phone from 0 to 50% in about 17 minutes and about 44 minutes to get you to 100%. Now finally, over to the camera. Now, like I said, in the beginning you have a 200 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization, a 8 megapixel ultra-wide shooter, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Now, on the front side you have a 16 megapixel selfie cam, which can shoot videos in 1080p with 60 FPS. Now, on the main camera you can even take pictures with 4K resolution, but you are stuck to just 30 FPS. Now, overall, you can say that this smartphone is doing a good job when it comes to photos and videos. It does struggle a little bit when it comes to moving pictures, but is doing a good enough job on your normal day-to-day pictures in daily light. It also handles your portrait shots quite well, so you get a decent enough background blur right here, which you can adjust on the back and on the front camera. The photos that you take in the auto mode look more natural and are not that vivid, but if you turn to the ultra wide mode, pictures look a little bit more vivid and have poppier colors, but of course at a cost of some details. Now, smartphone number 4, and that is the Nothing Phone 2A. Now, spec wise, we're talking about a full plastic smartphone with a plastic frame and a plastic back, but at least we get a 6.7-inch display with Corning Gorilla Glass 5. Now, the backside of this phone is also transparent, just like with every other Nothing phone. So you got the Nothing Phone logo on the bottom left corner, and the dual camera setup is right in the middle on the top instead of on one side like we have with basically every other smartphone. Now, this phone is IP54 splash, water and dust resistant and weighs in at around 190 grams. As for your display, you get a 6.7-inch AMOLED display with HDR10+, 1300 nits peak brightness and a smooth 120Hz display, which you can also trim down to just 60Hz or just leave it in the auto mode. You can also change the colors on this phone. By default it is set to Alive, but you can also set it to Standard, and there is even a slider to further customize the color temperature. Now, as far as it comes to watching movies, videos and Instagram Reels, this phone has some great colors thanks to the OLED display and the HDR10+ resolution. And you got a screen to body ratio of about 87%, which means you have very slim bezels all around this phone, which is really not a common thing to find on a smartphone in that price range. Now, the audio quality is actually pretty good with the stereo speaker setup. Now, the sound is clear and you can really bump up the volume. Next up, we got the battery life, and this little phone lasts longer than you would expect thanks to the big 5000 mAh battery. You can easily get through the whole day and night with still some percentages left in the morning. And the great part is if you do run out of battery life, it only takes about 23 minutes to get you back up to 50%, and it takes about an hour until this phone is fully charged. Now, feature-wise, this phone runs on Nothing OS 2.5 based on Android 14, and you can grab this phone with either 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage. Then you will have a fingerprint sensor which works good most of the time. I did have some problems every once in a while if you have some sweaty fingers or if your fingers are not totally dry, but therefore you got a face detection, and this one works every time. Now, the main feature on this phone is definitely the backside. So you can set timers and your 3 LED lights on the back will light up. They will light up when your phone is ringing, and there are super many different light shows that you can choose from. And you can choose certain light shows for a specific contact. Then you got some lights when you get a notification, and with the Glyph Composer, you can also compose your own lights on the backside. Next, we have the performance and gaming. The Nothing Phone 2A runs on the MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Pro, and like this, work on this phone is super smooth. But when it comes to gaming, this phone isn't the strongest. I play Genshin Impact, and you can definitely tell that you get quite a bit of lags when you are playing on the high or the highest graphics settings with about 25 frames top. So I would suggest playing on low to medium settings for the best gaming experience, even though you will not get over 35 FPS, but at least you will have no lags. As well as the camera, so you got a strong dual camera setup with two 50 megapixel cameras. One is the main camera with optical image stabilization, and the other one is an ultra-wide angle shooter. Then on the front you get a 32 megapixel selfie cam which can record videos in 1080p and 60 fps. The front camera is a bit better with 4K resolution but only 30 fps. Now when it comes to your portrait shots, I think you get a very nice background blurriness with a clear image of the person in front, but just the colors aren't as vivid. They are more on the natural side of things. The rest of your normal pictures really look good with nice and poppy colors. You get good contrast, and even the 2x zoom really looks good. You will still get some sharp pictures right here. Now the last smartphone for today is the Google Pixel 8a. For around 550 euros you get a smartphone that looks just like the older version. You get a 6.1 inch display with Corning Gorilla Glass 3, and it has a very curvy design. There are no hard edges anywhere on the smartphone. Now the green aluminum frame has a slightly different color than the backside, but it still looks good, plus you don't see your fingerprints on it. Now on the plastic backside we got the Google logo right in the middle and a big metal bar on which you will find your 64 megapixel camera with that juicy 4K resolution and 60 fps. Now there's also a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, and on the front you will find a 13 megapixel selfie cam. So like I said, you have a 6.1 inch OLED display with a resolution of 2400 by 1080p, and this one lights up with a peak of 2000 nits in auto mode. Now this phone is also more than capable of giving you nice and crisp colors when you're watching movies and videos on it. You got a good contrast and dark blacks. Now the only thing I really don't like too much about the smartphone are the rather chunky bezels all around. There are definitely some cheaper smartphones out there which have a smaller bezel. Now as for the audio, the Pixel 8a comes with a set of stereo speakers which have a decent sound, and the quality is good as well. It's just not as loud as some other smartphones, but you can definitely work with it. As for the battery, you will get a 4492 mAh battery that will give you about 6 to 7 hours of screen time. But once you run out of battery, it will take ages with the 18 watts wired charging to get back to 100%. Now up to the features. So this phone runs on Android 14 and comes with a stunning 7 years of OS and security updates. This phone comes with either 128 or 256 gigs of internal storage, which is not expandable by an extra SD card. Now on the Pixel 8a you will get a face detection which works great, and you will get a fingerprint sensor underneath your display which will even work if you get some sweaty or greasy fingers. Now as for some features, in your safety emergency settings you will not only find the SOS emergency, but right here you will also find car crash detection, crisis alerts, earthquake alerts, and unknown alerts, whatever that's supposed to be. Then you got a few AI features like on the other Google Pixel 8 models, like you can draw a circle around an object on the picture and it will do a Google search, plus you will get a translation of the text, and you can buy it if it's available. You also have the Magic Editor tool which will edit the picture for you. So it will add some background blurriness automatically and erase objects from the background, and it can do all kinds of cool stuff to your pictures, and it will even give you a few different examples of your finished new picture. Then you got a few more features like you can let Google read web pages for you, you can have some instant translations on your messages, it can translate your conversations, and you got live view on Google Maps. So pretty cool features overall. So the Pixel 8a runs on the Google Tensor G3, which means you really don't have to worry a bit when it comes to your everyday usage, but playing games can be a little bit of a struggle. You can play Genshin Impact on 30 FPS, but it's not getting better than this. Plus you will have some lags here and there. I mean, there is a game booster, but this one does not work with every game. As well as the camera. Now you will get a dual camera setup on the backside with a 64 megapixel main camera with OIS and a 13 megapixel ultra wide angle camera. On the front you will get a 30 megapixel cam as well, and both the front and the backside camera are capable of recording videos in 4K resolution. It's 60 FPS for the main and 30 FPS for the selfie camera. Now when it comes to the pictures, it's actually pretty good for a 550 euro smartphone. Your pictures are poppy and vivid, there's a good detail level, and just the edges of objects get a bit washy if you zoom in too much. on the photo, but the color difference between the ultra wide and the normal camera is actually not existent. Your portrait shots are always a little bit cropped in, but that's okay in my opinion. Just the background blur that you get by default is just a little bit too much in my opinion. Same goes for the selfie camera, even though it feels like you have the same quality of picture. Now you have to note that I've tested every single one of these smartphones in a separate video. Just click right here to get right to them. And I guess with that one being said, that's it for today. I hope you liked the video. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.